When worlds collide, even the Force trembles. The Empire's iron grip on the galaxy seemed unbreakable until a being from beyond the stars crashed through Coruscant's atmosphere. His eyes held no mercy, his strength no equal. Darth Vader sensed it immediately. This stranger was neither Jedi nor Sith, yet possessed power that could shatter moons and topple empires. In a galaxy defined by the balance between light and dark, what happens when a conqueror arrives who acknowledges neither? The impact crater smoldered in the undercity of Coruscant, a wound carved through 50 levels of metal and permacrete. Imperial troops formed a perimeter, their white armor gleaming under emergency floodlights as they trained weapons on the center of destruction. At the heart of the crater knelt a figure, broad-shouldered and imposing, his crimson cape singed but largely intact. Blood trickled from his temple, yet he appeared otherwise unharmed from an impact that should have vaporized any living being. Lord Vader strode through the line of stormtroopers, the rhythmic hiss of his respirator cutting through the chaos of emergency sirens. The Dark Lord stood at the edge of the crater, staring down at the stranger. Through the Force, Vader sensed something unusual, a presence both powerful and alien, yet curiously muted in ways he could not immediately comprehend. The kneeling figure rose, revealing a muscular physique encased in a white and burgundy bodysuit emblazoned with a strange symbol. His dark mustache framed a stern mouth, and his eyes held the cold calculation of a predator assessing new territory. He brushed debris from his shoulders with casual indifference to the dozens of blasters aimed at his chest. "This world," the stranger spoke, his voice carrying the weight of command, "appears to be the center of civilization in this galaxy." Vader ignited his lightsaber, the crimson blade humming with lethal intent. "You stand before the might of the Galactic Empire. Identify yourself." The stranger smiled, a gesture devoid of warmth. "I am Nolan, of the House of Viltrum. You may call me Omni-Man." His eyes narrowed as he studied the armored figure before him. "And what manner of conqueror are you, who hides behind a mask?" With a gesture from Vader, the stormtroopers opened fire. Blaster bolts screamed through the air, a lethal storm of energy converging on Omni-Man. The stranger did not move, allowing the barrage to strike his body. The bolts flashed against his skin like rain against stone, leaving him unmarked and unimpressed. Vader felt a tremor in the Force, a warning of danger more profound than he had anticipated. Before he could react, Omni-Man vanished from sight, moving with impossible speed. The air itself seemed to explode as the Viltrumite reappeared directly before Vader, his fist halting mere inches from the Sith Lord's helmet. The Force had saved Vader, granting him the fraction of a second needed to erect a barrier of energy that now crackled between them. The Dark Lord strained against the physical might pressing against his defense, a kind of raw strength he had never encountered. "Interesting," Omni-Man said, withdrawing his fist and hovering several feet above the ground. "You possess abilities beyond those of the others. Perhaps this galaxy offers more worthy challenges than I initially thought." Vader lowered his lightsaber slightly, tactical awareness overriding his desire for immediate confrontation. "The Emperor will want to speak with you." Omni-Man crossed his arms. "Emperor? Then take me to your ruler. I find myself curious about the Empire you serve." Across the vastness of Coruscant, Emperor Palpatine sat upon his throne, eyes closed in meditation. He had felt the disturbance in the Force, a ripple of power and violence that had momentarily pierced even his deep communion with the dark side. Something had entered his domain, something that did not belong. The Emperor opened his eyes, a smile spreading across his withered features. "How interesting," he whispered to the empty throne room. "How very interesting indeed." Within the vast hangar of the Imperial Palace, Omni-Man stood surrounded by the crimson-robed Imperial Guards, their Force pikes held at the ready. He observed the precision of their formation with the critical eye of a warrior who had conquered 1,000 worlds. The doors at the far end of the hangar parted, and Emperor Palpatine entered, flanked by more guards and followed closely by Darth Vader. The Emperor walked with the measured pace of absolute authority, his hood casting his face in shadow. "Welcome to Coruscant," Palpatine said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "I am Emperor Palpatine, ruler of the Galactic Empire." Omni-Man inclined his head slightly, the barest acknowledgement of the introduction. "Your empire is impressive in scale, if not in strength. I crashed through your orbital defenses without difficulty." A cold smile played across Palpatine's lips. "Our defenses are designed for vessels, not individuals capable of surviving in the vacuum of space. A remarkable ability." "One of many," Omni-Man replied. "Where I come from, the Viltrumite Empire spans galaxies, our rule absolute and unquestioned." He looked around the hangar, taking in the assembled troops, the ships, the machinery of imperial power. "Your technology is primitive by comparison, yet you maintain order across countless worlds. I find that commendable." Palpatine's eyes narrowed, gleaming with dangerous interest. "You speak of your empire in the present tense, yet you are alone here. Why would a representative of such power arrive without announcement or escort?" For the first time, something like uncertainty crossed Omni-Man's features. "I was engaged in battle with enemies of Viltrum. Our conflict tore a rift in space itself. I was pulled through. To your galaxy, it seems. A dimensional traveler," Palpatine mused. "Fascinating. And now that you find yourself in our humble realm, what are your intentions, Omni-Man of Viltrum?" "To return home if possible," Omni-Man stated flatly. "But until that time, I will observe your empire. Perhaps there are methods of control here worth studying." Vader stepped forward. "And if we consider your presence a threat?" Omni-Man smiled, the expression devoid of humor. "I have conquered planets single-handedly. Do not mistake my curiosity for weakness." The Emperor raised a placating hand. "Peace, Lord Vader. Our guest deserves hospitality while we explore possibilities of mutual benefit." He turned his attention back to Omni-Man. "You must be weary from your ordeal. Allow us to provide suitable accommodations while our scientists study the anomaly that brought you to us. Perhaps we can find a way to return you to your empire." "Very well," Omni-Man agreed, though his eyes remained wary. "But understand this, Emperor. I will not be contained, studied, or controlled. I accept your hospitality as one ruler to another, nothing more." Palpatine bowed slightly. "Of course, Lord Vader will show you to quarters befitting your status. We have much to discuss in the days ahead." As Imperial attendants led Omni-Man from the hangar, Vader turned to his master. "He is dangerous beyond measure." "Yes," the Emperor agreed, watching the retreating figure of their visitor. "And potentially useful. I sense no connection to the Force within him, yet his power is undeniable. Monitor him closely, Lord Vader. Learn his weaknesses. Every being has them." "And if he cannot be controlled?" Palpatine's smile faded, his eyes cold as stars. "Then we shall discover whether this Viltrumite can truly stand against the full power of the dark side." In the quarters assigned to him, Omni-Man stood at the viewport, gazing out at the endless cityscape of Coruscant. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the gleaming spires and towers. He had spent hours observing the constant flow of speeders, ships, and transports, analyzing the patterns of movement, the infrastructure of this galactic capital. This empire was different from Viltrum in many ways, built on technology and numbers rather than inherent biological superiority. Yet there was something familiar in its ruthless efficiency, in the fear he had seen in the eyes of those who served it. The door chimed, interrupting his thoughts. "Enter," he called, not turning from the view. Grand Moff Tarkin stepped into the room, his angular features set in an expression of practiced neutrality. "The Emperor has requested your presence at a military demonstration. He believes it might interest you." Omni-Man turned, studying the human with mild curiosity. "What manner of demonstration?" "A display of imperial power," Tarkin replied, a hint of pride coloring his tone. one that ensures compliance across the galaxy. Minutes later, Omni-Man followed Tarkin onto the bridge of an Imperial Star Destroyer moving into orbit around Coruscant. The bridge crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency, though many cast nervous glances at the imposing visitor. A hologram flickered to life at the center of the bridge, displaying a massive spherical structure, incomplete but unmistakably a battle station of unprecedented scale. The Death Star, Tarkin announced with undisguised satisfaction. When completed, it will be the ultimate power in the galaxy. A single weapons system capable of destroying an entire planet. Omni-Man approached the hologram, circling it with a critical eye. Impressive engineering, but inefficient. Why build such a massive structure when targeted strikes can accomplish the same goal? Tarkin's expression tightened slightly. Fear. Lord Omni-Man. The fear of destruction is often more effective than destruction itself. Fear is a tool of the weak. Omni-Man replied dismissively. True power requires no such elaborate displays. On my world, I could render a planet, uninhabitable with my bare hands, flying at sufficient velocity through its core. Indeed? Tarkin's skepticism was evident despite his diplomatic tone. Perhaps a practical demonstration of your abilities would be enlightening. The Emperor has authorized a test. The hologram shifted, now showing a small moon orbiting a gas giant in a remote system. This moon is uninhabited, used only for mining operations now abandoned. We would be curious to see your capabilities firsthand. Omni-Man studied the image, then nodded. Prepare a ship. I will require precise coordinates. Tarkin smiled thinly. That will not be necessary. Lord Vader has volunteered to escort you personally. Hours later, Darth Vader's TIE Advanced X-1 dropped out of hyperspace near the designated moon, a barren rock pockmarked with the remnants of mining operations. Behind him, keeping pace without any visible means of propulsion, flew Omni-Man, his cape streaming in the vacuum of space, his body completely unaffected by the hostile environment. Vader's voice crackled through the communication device he had given the Viltrumite. The target is before you. The Emperor awaits your demonstration. Omni-Man nodded once, then accelerated away from the TIE fighter with such sudden force that the shockwave caused Vader's ship to spin momentarily out of control. The Sith Lord regained stability in time to witness what followed. The Viltrumite became a streak of white against the blackness of space, moving with such velocity that Vader's sensors could barely track him. He struck the moon at its equator, penetrating the surface like a bullet through paper. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, fissures began spreading across the moon's surface, a web of cracks propagating outward from the impact point. Vader watched in grim fascination as the small celestial body began to break apart, fragments spinning away into space as its structural integrity failed catastrophically. Within minutes, where a moon had been, there was now only a debris field, rocks and dust spinning in the void. Omni-Man reappeared beside Vader's ship, not a mark upon him despite the incredible violence he had just unleashed. Satisfied? His voice came through the communicator, tinged with arrogance. In the silence that followed, Vader considered the implications of what he had witnessed. This being possessed power that rivaled the Death Star, contained within a single individual. The strategic value was obvious, but so too was the threat. The Emperor will be most impressed, Vader finally replied, his mechanical voice betraying nothing of his thoughts. Return to Coruscant. There is much to discuss. As they made the journey back to the capital, Vader observed the Viltrumite flying alongside his ship. Through the Force, he probed carefully, seeking some insight into this being's mind. What he found was disturbing, even to a Sith Lord. Behind Omni-Man's civilized exterior lurked a cold ruthlessness, a belief in strength as the only true virtue that made even the doctrine of the Sith seem restrained by comparison. On Coruscant, news of the destroyed moon spread quickly through the upper echelons of the Empire. In his throne room, Emperor Palpatine received the report with calculated interest. "And you say he accomplished this feat alone, with no weapons or technology?" he asked Admiral Ozzel, who stood nervously before him. "Yes, Your Excellency. The recordings from Lord Vader's ship confirm it. The being simply flew through the moon at sufficient velocity to shatter it from within." Palpatine steepled his fingers, his expression thoughtful. Such power could be a valuable addition to our forces, particularly against the growing rebellion. "If he can be trusted," Ozzel ventured cautiously. The Emperor's eyes flashed. "Trust is irrelevant, Admiral. Power respects power. This Omni-Man respects strength and order, principles upon which the Empire is founded." His voice lowered to a near whisper. "But should his loyalty waver, there are means of dealing with even the most physically powerful beings." Later that evening, Omni-Man stood in the Emperor's private observatory, looking out at the stars. Palpatine joined him, dispensing with his usual entourage. "Your demonstration was most impressive," the Emperor said. "It confirms what I suspected upon your arrival. You are a being of extraordinary capability. Your Death Star seems redundant in comparison," Omni-Man remarked. Palpatine smiled. "Perhaps. But you are one individual. The Empire requires systems that function regardless of any single being's presence." He moved closer. "Tell me more of your Viltrumite Empire. What principles guide your rule?" Omni-Man's gaze remained fixed on the stars. Strength, the strong lead, the weak follow or perish. For thousands of years, we have culled our own population, ensuring only the most worthy survive to continue our lineage. Through selective breeding and combat, we have created a race of perfect warriors. A philosophy not unlike the rule of two that governs the Sith, Palpatine observed. Power concentrated, refined, passed on only to the worthy. Yet your empire relies on the masses, Omni-Man countered. Billions of weaklings maintaining your rule through sheer numbers. A necessary compromise until certain technologies reach maturity. Palpatine turned to face the Viltrumite directly. "Which brings me to a proposal. While our scientists work to understand the anomaly that brought you here, perhaps you might lend your unique abilities to a matter of Imperial security." Omni-Man raised an eyebrow, interested despite himself. "What matter?" "A growing rebellion threatens the stability of the Empire. Terrorists who strike at our installations and disappear before justice can be delivered. With your speed and power, you could eliminate their leadership in a single swift operation." "And why would I involve myself in your internal conflicts?" Palpatine's voice hardened slightly. "Because in return, I offer the full resources of the Empire in finding your way home. Our finest minds, our most advanced technology, all focused on your predicament." Omni-Man considered this for a long moment. "Where are these rebels located?" The Emperor's thin lips curved into a smile. "We have tracked their latest base to a remote planet called Dantooine. Lord Vader has been dispatched to confirm its location, but by the time a fleet can be assembled, they will likely have fled. Your intervention could end this tiresome game of pursuit." "Very well," Omni-Man agreed. "Provide me with the coordinates. I will show your rebels the futility of opposing a true empire." As the Viltrumite departed to prepare, Palpatine activated a secure communication channel. The blue hologram of Darth Vader appeared before him. "Master," Vader acknowledged with a bow. "Lord Vader, our visitor has agreed to assist with the rebel problem. Ensure that the coordinates I provided lead him to the settlement on Dantooine." "The civilian outpost?" Vader questioned, surprise evident even through the modulation of his voice. "Yes," Palpatine confirmed coldly. "It is time to test not only his power but his commitment to our cause. Have surveillance droids in place. I want to witness his methods firsthand." On the bridge of his Star Destroyer, Vader closed the communication and turned to the viewport. The Emperor's strategy was clear. If ruthless, the settlement on Dantooine housed no rebels, only farmers and their families who had refused to abandon their ancestral lands despite Imperial annexation. Their destruction would serve multiple purposes: the political value of a warning to others who might defy the Empire, and more importantly, a test of their new allies' willingness to shed innocent blood. Vader felt a momentary disturbance in the Force, a whisper of warning. The Viltrumite was dangerous in ways that extended beyond his physical power. There was an ideological purity to his brutality that even Vader, for all his crimes, found unsettling. The next morning, Omni-Man departed Coruscant, streaking into the upper atmosphere with such force that he triggered atmospheric defense systems across 3 sectors. Within minutes he had left the core worlds behind, pushing himself to speeds that caused the stars to blur around him. He had memorized the galactic charts provided by Imperial intelligence, plotting a course through the void toward the outer rim. The journey to Dantooine took hours rather than the days it would have required an Imperial vessel, even with hyperdrive. As he approached the planet, Omni-Man slowed, allowing himself to drift into orbit as he surveyed the world below. It was predominantly agricultural, vast plains and forests dotted with scattered settlements. He focused on the coordinates provided by the Emperor, identifying a moderately sized community nestled in a valley between commented, rolling hills. From orbit, it appeared peaceful, with no obvious military infrastructure or defenses. This did not surprise him. In his experience, insurgents often hid among civilian populations, using their innocence as a shield. Such tactics deserved no mercy. Omni-Man descended through the atmosphere, a controlled fall that left a trail of superheated air in his wake. He landed at the center of the settlement's main thoroughfare, the impact cracking the paved surface beneath his feet. It was midday, and the streets were busy with locals going about their business. They stopped and stared at the caped figure who had appeared so suddenly among them. He looked around, noting the primitive construction of the buildings, the simple attire of the people, the lack of weapons or uniformity that would indicate a military presence. Something felt wrong. A small child, no more than 7 years old, approached him cautiously, eyes wide with curiosity rather than fear. "Are you a Jedi?" the boy asked, staring at Omni-Man's costume. Before he could respond, a woman rushed forward, pulling the child back protectively. "Forgive him," she said quickly, fear evident in her voice. "We want no trouble with the Empire." Omni-Man frowned. "This settlement is identified as a rebel base. Where are your warriors? Your weapons?" An older man stepped forward from the gathering crowd, his weathered face set in lines of resignation. "There are no rebels here, sir. We are farmers, craftspeople. We have lived on Dantooine for generations." "Imperial records indicate otherwise," Omni-Man stated flatly, though doubt had begun to creep into his mind. The old man shook his head sadly. "The Empire demanded we abandon our lands 2 seasons ago. We refused to leave our homes, but we have paid our taxes, followed their laws. Our only crime is wishing to live where our ancestors are buried." Omni-Man's eyes narrowed as understanding dawned. The Emperor had sent him not to crush rebels, but to massacre civilians who had shown the slightest defiance to Imperial authority. It was a test, designed to measure his willingness to serve without question. In the orbit above, an Imperial probe droid recorded the scene, transmitting directly to Coruscant where the Emperor watched with clinical interest. Omni-Man looked at the faces surrounding him, the fear and confusion in their eyes. These were not warriors or even idealists fighting for a cause. They were simply people trying to survive under the rule of an empire not so different from his own. He had killed countless beings across many worlds in service to Viltrum. Entire civilizations had fallen before him, yet always there had been purpose, the advancement of Viltrumite order, the strengthening of the empire. This was mere butchery for the sake of a demonstration. "Your Emperor sent me to destroy this settlement," he announced, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent crowd. "To kill you all as an example to others who might defy his will." Gasps and cries of fear rippled through the gathering. Several people began to run, though they surely knew escape was futile against a being who could shatter moons. "But I am not his executioner," Omni-Man continued, I am Omni-Man of Viltrum. I serve no master but myself." With that, he launched himself skyward, accelerating through the atmosphere and back into space. As he departed the Dantooine system, he knew he had made a choice that would have consequences. The Emperor would not take this defiance lightly, nor would he submit to the authority of a being he now recognized as far weaker than himself, regardless of whatever mystical powers the man and his apprentice wielded. On Coruscant, Emperor Palpatine watched the transmission end as the Viltrumite vanished from the probe droid's sensors. His expression revealed nothing of his thoughts. "It appears our visitor has made his choice," he said softly. Mas Amedda, standing nearby, shifted, nervously. "Shall I order the fleet to Dantooine, Your Excellency? The settlement can still be dealt with." "No," Palpatine replied, rising from his throne. "Let them be, for now. They have served their purpose." His yellow eyes gleamed with malevolent calculation. "Contact Lord Vader. Tell him to return to Coruscant immediately. Our guest will be returning soon, I suspect, and we must be prepared to receive him appropriately." In the vastness of space, Omni-Man flew without destination, his mind in turmoil. This galaxy was not his own, its politics and conflicts not his concern. Yet he found himself troubled by the casual cruelty of the Empire, so similar to methods he himself had employed throughout his long life. The difference, he told himself, was purpose. Viltrum conquered to improve, to strengthen the universe under the guidance of superior beings. This empire seemed to exist purely for the aggrandizement of its emperor, built on fear rather than respect. His thoughts were interrupted by the approach of a small ship, dropping out of hyperspace nearly in his path. It was a battered freighter, its hull scorched by weapons fire. Omni-Man paused in his flight, watching as the vessel limped through space, trailing debris and venting atmosphere from a breach in its port side. Curious, he approached, keeping pace with the damaged craft. Through a viewport, he could see the crew scrambling to make repairs, their movements urgent. One figure, a young woman with determination etched on her face, worked frantically at the ship's controls. She happened to glance up, catching sight of the man flying alongside her ship. Her eyes widened in shock, and she reached for what appeared to be a communication system. Omni-Man could have destroyed the vessel with a single blow. Something stayed his hand. Instead, he gestured toward a nearby moon, indicating they should land. Whether they would comply or attempt to flee remained to be seen. To his mild surprise, the ship changed course, descending toward the small, rocky moon he had indicated. Omni-Man followed, landing near the spot where the freighter settled onto the barren surface. The ship's ramp lowered, and three figures emerged cautiously. The young woman he had seen through the viewport led them, a blaster held ready at her side. She was flanked by a tall, fur-covered being armed with a bowcaster and a young man whose hand rested on what Omni-Man recognized as a lightsaber, similar to the weapon Vader carried. "Who are you?" the woman called, her voice clear despite the thin atmosphere. She wore a breathing mask, as did her companions, another reminder that they lacked his physical resilience. "I am Omni-Man," he replied, standing with arms crossed. "Your ship is damaged. You flee from something." The woman exchanged glances with her companions before answering. "Imperial forces. We barely escaped their blockade of the Kuat system." "You are rebels," Omni-Man stated, remembering the Emperor's words about a growing resistance movement. The young man with the lightsaber stepped forward. "We fight against tyranny, against an empire built on the suffering of countless beings across the galaxy. If that makes us rebels, then yes, we are." Omni-Man studied him with newfound interest. "You carry the same weapon as Darth Vader." The young man's expression hardened. "Vader was once a Jedi, as my father was, before the Empire hunted them to near extinction. I follow their path, not Vader's corruption of it." "Luke," the woman cautioned, but the young man shook his head. "He already knows who we are, Leia. If he means us harm, hiding our identities won't help." Omni-Man approached them slowly, noting how the fur-covered being raised his weapon defensively. Your ship cannot fly much further in its current condition. The Empire will find you before you can reach safety." "We're aware of that," Leia replied tersely. "Chewie thinks he can repair the hyperdrive enough for one more jump, but we need time." "I could destroy you now," Omni-Man said matter-of-factly. "The Emperor would reward me for eliminating rebel leadership." Luke's hand tightened on his lightsaber, but he made no move to ignite it. "But you won't. Something tells me if that was your intention, we'd already be dead." A ghost of a smile touched Omni-Man's lips. This young man had courage, at least. "Your Emperor sent me to massacre innocents on Dantooine, farmers and children whose only crime was refusing to abandon their homes. I declined his test." Surprise and then cautious hope flickered across Leia's face. "The settlement on Dantooine still stands? When I left it, yes." Omni-Man's expression darkened. "Though I suspect the Empire will send others to complete the task, I refused." "We have people there," Leia said urgently, turning to her companions. "We need to warn them, get them out before the Empire arrives." "Your ship cannot make the journey," Omni-Man pointed out. Luke studied the using becoming the Restand, Viltrumite intently. You could reach Dantooine before any Imperial fleet." Omni-Man raised an eyebrow. "Why would I involve myself in your conflict?" "Because you've already chosen a side," Leia challenged him. "The moment you refused to be Palpatine's executioner, you made yourself his enemy. The Empire doesn't tolerate defiance." "I fear no Empire," Omni-Man scoffed. "I have destroyed worlds more advanced than anything in this galaxy." The fur-covered being, Chewie, growled something in a language Omni-Man did not understand, but the sentiment was clear enough from his tone and gestures. Skepticism, tinged with threat. "Perhaps not," Luke agreed, "but even you can't fight an entire galaxy alone, and that's what you'll be doing once the Emperor marks you as a target." Omni-Man considered this. The young rebel had a point. While he had no doubt of his ability to defeat any military force sent against him, he was a stranger in this realm. With no allies and no clear path of home, strategic alliances had their uses, even for a Viltrumite. "Very well," he decided. "I will warn your people on Dantooine. In exchange, I want information. Everything you know about anomalies in space, rifts between worlds, anything that might explain how I came to be here and how I might return to my own galaxy." Relief washed over Leia's face. "We have records, scientists who study such phenomena. If anyone can help you, they can." She hesitated, then extended her hand. "Thank you." Omni-Man looked at the offered hand for a moment before taking it briefly. "I do not do this out of altruism, Princess. Remember that." Her eyes widened slightly. "How did you know my title?" "You carry yourself like royalty," he replied simply, "even in defeat." With that, he launched himself from the moon's surface, accelerating into space with such force that the trio had to brace themselves against the shockwave of his departure. As he vanished from sight, Luke exchanged a troubled look with Leia. "Can we trust him?" she asked quietly. Luke closed his eyes briefly, reaching out through the Force. "I sense great power in him, and great pride, but also conflict, doubt." He opened his eyes again. "He's not our ally, not truly, but for now, his goals align with ours." "And later?" Chewie growled a question that needed no translation. "Later," Luke said grimly, "we may face a threat greater than the Empire itself." Omni-Man streaked through the stars, pushing himself to velocities that would have torn apart any vessel in this galaxy. His mind raced as quickly as his body. He had made a choice, defied the Emperor, and now allied himself, however temporarily, with these rebels. It was not a decision he had anticipated when he awoke that morning. Something about this galaxy was affecting him, causing him to question principles and methods he had followed for centuries. Perhaps it was the absence of his own kind, the lack of the constant reinforcement of Viltrumite ideology. Or perhaps it was seeing a reflection of that ideology in the Empire, stripped of the justifications he had always accepted. He reached Dantooine in a fraction of the time it had taken him before, descending once more to the settlement he had visited earlier. The people scattered at his approach, fear evident in their movements. "Listen to me," he called out, hovering above the central square. "The Empire will send ships to destroy this settlement. You must evacuate immediately." The elder who had spoken to him before stepped forward cautiously. "We have nowhere to go. This is our home." "Then you will die here," Omni-Man stated bluntly. "Your rebel allies, the princess and her companions, sent me to warn you. They cannot reach you in time themselves." Murmurs spread through the gathering crowd as people exchanged worried glances. The mention of rebels and a princess seemed to carry weight with them. "How long do we have?" someone called out. Omni-Man calculated quickly. Based on the speed of Imperial vessels, perhaps 2 standard days, no more. The elder nodded gravely. "We will need transportation, ships." "I am not a transport service," Omni-Man replied coldly. "I delivered the warning. What you do with it is your concern." A young woman pushed through the crowd, her expression fierce. "There are children here, elderly who cannot travel far on foot. Are you saying you'll just leave us to die?" Omni-Man felt an unexpected twinge of something. Not quite guilt, a sensation he had thought himself long past feeling. More like recognition. The woman's defiance, her concern for the weak, reminded him distantly of his own son. He thrust the thought aside. There is an Imperial outpost 30 kilometers to the north. Small garrison, minimal defenses. They have transport ships capable of evacuating this settlement. His eyes narrowed. "I will create a diversion. You will have approximately 1 hour to secure the vessels and return for your people." Relief and determination replaced fear on many faces. Men and women began organizing immediately, gathering weapons, designating teams. "Thank you," the young woman said simply. Omni-Man did not acknowledge her gratitude. Instead, he rose into the air once more. "1 hour," he repeated. "Be ready." The Imperial outpost was exactly as he had observed from orbit during his approach to the planet. A small garrison of stormtroopers, 3 transport ships, minimal defense systems, child's play. He struck without warning, tearing through the perimeter wall at supersonic speed, the shockwave alone incapacitating half the defenders before they could reach their weapons. The remaining stormtroopers opened fire, their blaster bolts bouncing harmlessly off his skin as he methodically destroyed their heavy weapons, communications array, and defensive positions. Careful to aim away from the transports, he used his heat vision to detonate the outpost's fuel reserves, creating a spectacular explosion that would be visible for kilometers in every direction and would certainly draw the attention of any Imperial forces in the region. As the settlers arrived in commandeered vehicles, he noted with approval their swift, organized approach to securing the transports. These were not mere farmers after all, but people with military training disguising themselves as civilians. The rebellion, it seemed, had deeper roots than the Empire realized. Within the hour he had allotted, the transports were loaded and lifting off, carrying the entire population of the settlement toward the safety of deep space. Omni-Man watched them go, noting that one small shuttle had detached from the group and was approaching his position. The shuttle landed nearby, and the young woman who had confronted him in the settlement emerged. "Our people are safe, thanks to you," she said, climbing down from the craft. "I've been instructed to offer you passage to our base. The rebel leadership would like to meet with you." Omni-Man considered the offer. Allying more openly with the rebellion would irrevocably position him against the Empire. Yet the rebels might indeed possess information that could help him return to his own galaxy, his own war. "Very well," he decided, "though I can fly faster than your vessel." She smiled slightly. "Yes, but you don't know where our base is located. Unless you can read encrypted coordinates from my mind?" He acknowledged the point with a nod and followed her into the shuttle. As they lifted off, joining the convoy of transports now entering the upper atmosphere, Omni-Man gazed out at the stars, wondering what reception awaited him among these rebels who fought against impossible odds for a freedom he had spent his life denying to others. On Coruscant, Emperor Palpatine sat in his meditation chamber, eyes closed, his consciousness extended through the dark side of the Force. He had felt the disturbance, the shifting of possibilities, the moment Omni-Man had chosen to defy him. "You summoned me, my master." Darth Vader's deep voice broke the silence as the Sith Lord entered and knelt before his master. Palpatine opened his eyes. "Our visitor has made his choice, Lord Vader. He aids the rebellion now. The Viltrumite is powerful," Vader acknowledged. "Perhaps too powerful to confront directly." "Power takes many forms," Palpatine replied, his voice silky with malevolence. "The Viltrumite's physical strength is impressive, yes, but he is vulnerable in ways he does not yet comprehend." The Emperor rose from his seat, moving to a holographic display that showed the Death Star's construction progress. "Accelerate the timetable. I want the battle station operational within 3 months. The engineers report that would be impossible. Master, inform them that failure will be met with the full displeasure of the Empire." Palpatine's voice hardened. "And dispatch our agents to every corner of the galaxy. I want any information about dimensional anomalies, rifts in space, anything that might relate to our visitor's arrival." Vader tilted his helmet slightly. "To help him return home," a cold smile spread across Palpatine's withered features. "To ensure he never does, unless it is by our design and serves our purpose." The smile faded, replaced by a look of intense concentration. "There is more at work here than mere chance, Lord Vader. The Force itself seems disturbed by this being's presence, as if he represents a thread woven incorrectly into the fabric of our reality." "What would you have me do, Master?" "Monitor the rebellion's communications more closely than ever. When they move to introduce their new ally to their leadership, we will be waiting." Palpatine's eyes gleamed with anticipation. "And I believe it is time to accelerate your apprentice's training. The Inquisitors alone will not be sufficient for what is to come." Vader bowed his head. "It will be done, my master." As the Sith Lord departed, Palpatine turned back to the holographic display, now showing the incomplete Death Star alongside a simulation of a planet being destroyed by its superlaser. Such technological terror paled in comparison to the raw power of their visitor. But technology had one advantage over even the most physically powerful being, he mused. It could be controlled, predicted, relied upon to function exactly as designed. The same could not be said for living weapons, no matter how mighty they appeared. The rebel convoy traveled for days, taking a circuitous route through multiple star systems, occasionally separating and regrouping to confuse any Imperial pursuit. Omni-Man observed these tactics with professional interest, noting the discipline and coordination involved. These were not merely idealistic insurgents, but a well-organized military force operating under severe constraints. During the journey, he spent much of his time with the young woman who had recruited him, a commander named Arian, learning about the history of the conflict between Empire and Rebellion. The tale was familiar in many ways, a powerful centralized authority crushing opposition beneath its heel, resistance flaring wherever oppression grew too severe. Yet unlike the conquests of Viltrum, this empire seemed to offer nothing in return for submission. No advancement, no improvement, only the boot pressing eternally upon the neck of the galaxy. It was conquest for the sake of control, power for the sake of power. "We're approaching the rendezvous point," Arian announced as the shuttle dropped out of hyperspace near a nondescript ice planet. Omni-Man studied the world through the viewport. Hoth, he identified it from the star charts he had memorized, an odd choice for a base. Hostile environment, limited resources. "Which makes it perfect," Arian replied with a grim smile. "The Empire considers it too inhospitable to bother with, and our engineers have worked wonders with the natural cave systems." As they descended through the atmosphere, Omni-Man noted the brutal weather conditions, a howling blizzard that reduced visibility to near zero. The shuttle pilot navigated by instruments alone, following a beacon signal to a massive set of doors built into the face of a glacier. The doors parted just enough to admit the small craft before sealing again against the storm. Inside, the rebel base was a hive of activity. Technicians worked on damaged fighters, officers clustered around tactical displays, medical personnel tended to the wounded. It was a desperate operation, running on minimal resources and maximum determination. A welcoming committee awaited them as the shuttle's ramp lowered. At its head stood Princess Leia and the young man with the lightsaber, Luke. Behind them were officers of various species, all regarding Omni-Man with a mixture of hope and wariness. "Welcome to Echo Base," Leia greeted him formally. "Our leadership is assembled and eager to speak with you." Omni-Man followed them through the icy corridors, noting defensive positions, personnel distribution, the location of critical systems. Old habits of tactical assessment died hard, even when he had no immediate plans to exploit such knowledge. The command center was a large chamber carved from ice and reinforced with durasteel. At its center stood a holographic projector currently displaying a map of the galaxy, with Imperial strongpoints marked in red, rebel bases and allies in blue. Most of the map glowed crimson. An older man with a white beard approached, his uniform indicating high rank. "I am General Karlist Riikan, commander of Echo Base. With me is Mon Mothma, leader of the Alliance to Restore the Republic." He gestured to a dignified woman in flowing white robes who inclined her head in greeting. "You may call me Omni-Man," the Viltrumite replied. "I understand you have information that might help me return to my own galaxy." Mon Mothma stepped forward. "We have reports of similar phenomena to what you described, tears in the fabric of space. Our scientists have been studying them, though with limited resources." She gestured to a Sarian with an enlarged cranium who stood nearby. "Master Ki-Adi-Mundi has particular insight into such matters." The Sarian approached, regarding Omni-Man with keen interest. "These rifts appear at points where the Force itself is disturbed, often near ancient Jedi or Sith temples, or places where great violence has occurred." "The Force," Omni-Man repeated skeptically. "Your mystical energy field," Luke spoke up. "It's real. It's what gives the Jedi their power, and the Sith like Vader and the Emperor. Yet it has no effect on me," Omni-Man observed. "Your Vader tried to probe my mind, to influence my thoughts. I felt nothing." Ki-Adi-Mundi stroked his beard thoughtfully. "Fascinating. You exist outside the Force, or perhaps beside it. This may explain how you were able to traverse the barrier between galaxies. You are not bound by the same laws that govern our reality." "Can you help me return home or not?" Omni-Man demanded, growing impatient with the philosophical discussion. "Possibly," the Sarian replied. "We have located what appears to be the epicenter of these dimensional disturbances, an ancient temple on a world called Malachor Fifth. The energies there might be harnessed to create a portal similar to the one that brought you here." Leia stepped forward. "But we would ask something in return. Your help against the Empire, at least until we can organize this expedition to Malachor." Omni-Man's eyes narrowed. "I have already saved your people on Dantooine. What more do you require?" "Intelligence," General Riikan answered. "You've been inside the Imperial Palace, spoken with the Emperor himself. Information about their defenses, their plans, particularly regarding this Death Star we've heard rumors of." Omni-Man considered this. The request was reasonable, and the delay acceptable if it led to his return. "Go home. Very well. I will provide what information I can, and I will assist in one military operation of significant value to your cause. Then we journey to this temple, and I return home." Relief visibly swept through the rebel leadership. Mon Mothma nodded graciously. "Agreed. Your assistance could turn the tide of this conflict, even if only temporarily." As the meeting concluded and officers dispersed to their duties, Luke approached Omni-Man. "I'd like to show you something, if you're willing." Curious, Omni-Man followed the young man through the base to a small private chamber where a metallic sphere hovered in the air, emitting small bursts of energy at random intervals. A training remote, Luke explained, igniting his lightsaber. It helps Jedi practice their connection to the Force. Omni-Man watched as Luke deflected the energy bolts with his glowing blade, his movements becoming more fluid and precise as he allowed himself to be guided by instinct rather than conscious thought. "Impressive reflexes," Omni-Man commented, "though still far slower than what I'm capable of." Luke deactivated the remote and turned to face him. "It's not just about speed or strength. The Force connects all living things, binds the galaxy together. It's about harmony, balance." "Philosophical platitudes," Omni-Man dismissed. "Power is what matters. The ability to impose one's will upon reality." "Is that what you believe?" Luke asked quietly. "Or is that what you were taught to believe?" The question struck Omni-Man with unexpected force. For a moment, he saw not the young rebel before him, but the face of his son, asking a similar question with the same quiet intensity. "You know nothing of me or my kind," he replied, his voice harsher than intended. Luke was undeterred. "I know you chose not to kill innocents on Dantooine. I know you helped evacuate people you had no obligation to save. Those aren't the actions of someone who believes only in power." Omni-Man turned away. "Do not mistake tactical decisions for moral ones, boy. I defied your emperor because I serve no master, not out of concern for farmers and their children." "If you say so," Luke replied, a hint of a smile playing at his lips. "But I sense conflict in you. The same conflict that exists in all of us. The choice between what is easy and what is right." Before Omni-Man could formulate a suitably cutting response, alarms began blaring throughout the base. Luke's communicator crackled to life with a frantic voice. "Imperial probe droid detected in Sector 4. Possible security breach." Luke's expression hardened. "We've been found." If that droid transmitted our location back to the Empire. Omni-Man was already moving, streaking through the corridors of the base at a speed that left personnel staggering in his wake. He burst through the main doors into the howling blizzard, his enhanced vision immediately locating the fleeing probe droid, a black sphere racing toward the upper atmosphere. With a burst of acceleration, he overtook the droid, seizing it in a grip of steel. The machine struggled, attempting to self-destruct, but Omni-Man crushed it before the sequence could complete, reducing it to twisted metal and sparking circuitry. He returned to the base, depositing the remains before a stunned group of rebel technicians. "Examine this. Determine if it transmitted your location." Hours later, the rebel leadership had reconvened in the command center, tension evident in every face. "The probe transmitted a partial signal before you destroyed it," General Recon reported grimly. "Not enough to pinpoint our exact location, but enough to narrow it down to this sector. The Empire will send scout ships to every potential hiding place." "How long do we have?" Leia asked. "Days, at most. We need to begin evacuation procedures immediately." Mon Mothma turned to Omni-Man. "This may be the assistance we requested of you. Cover our evacuation. Delay any Imperial forces that arrive before our transports can escape." Omni-Man nodded. "I will destroy their ships before they can land troops." "No," Luke interjected forcefully. "The evacuation must appear to be a rout, a desperate flight. If the Empire suspects we have an ally of your power, they'll change tactics, perhaps accelerate their plans for the Death Star." "The boy is right," General Recon agreed. "Strategic ambiguity is one of our few advantages. We need you to damage their forces, delay them, but not in a way that reveals your involvement." Omni-Man frowned. Such constraints seemed unnecessary to him, but he understood the principle of disguising one's full capabilities from an enemy. "Very well. I will limit my intervention to what could plausibly be attributed to your own forces." As the rebels scrambled to prepare for evacuation, packing essential equipment and plotting escape routes, Omni-Man found himself standing alone at a viewport, staring out at the swirling snow. The ice planet reminded him strangely of Earth, the world he had been sent to infiltrate and eventually conquer, where he had lived for decades among humans, even taking one as his wife and having a half-breed son. That thought path led to uncomfortable places, memories of conflict and betrayal that he preferred not to examine too closely. He was distracted from these reflections by the approach of Princess Leia. "Our scouts report Imperial ships entering the system," she informed him tensely. "Star destroyers, at least 3 of them. Impressive commitment of resources for a minor rebel base," Omni-Man observed. Leia's expression was grim. "They're not here for the base. They're here for you." Before Omni-Man could respond, the entire structure shook violently, ice and snow cascading from the ceiling as explosions sounded in the distance. "Orbital bombardment," Leia explained, already moving toward the command center. "They're softening our defenses before landing troops." Omni-Man followed, watching as rebel officers coordinated a desperate defense. Ground troops were moving into trenches and defensive positions. Ion cannons were being powered up to provide cover fire for the first transports attempting to evacuate. "The first wave of Imperial walkers has been spotted," an officer reported. "AT-ATs approaching from the north." Leia turned to Omni-Man. "This is it. Remember, delay them, damage them, but don't reveal your full capabilities." With a nod, Omni-Man departed, streaking through the base and out into the blizzard once more. From high above, he observed the Imperial assault. Massive armored walkers advanced across the frozen plains, their heavy cannons already firing at the rebel defenses. Behind them came lighter AT-STs and columns of snowtroopers. It was an impressive display of force, methodical and overwhelming. In his long career as a conqueror, Omni-Man had led similar assaults against defiant worlds. Now, for the first time, he found himself on with the other side of such an equation. With careful restraint, he began his counterattack, moving at speeds that would blur his image on Imperial sensors. He struck the lead walker at a structural weak point where the legs connected to the body, applying just enough force to damage but not completely destroy the machine. The walker stumbled, crashing into its neighbor, both toppling to the snow in a tangle of metal limbs. Moving swiftly to another section of the battlefield, he repeated the tactic, always careful to use only enough strength to appear as though the damage could have been caused by rebel weapons or strategically placed explosives. The Imperial advance slowed, officers confused by the pattern of failures afflicting their supposedly invulnerable assault vehicles. Omni-Man watched with satisfaction as rebel transports began lifting off, protected by the ion cannons suppressing fire against the star destroyers in orbit. His satisfaction was short-lived. A new presence entered the battle, a distinctive TI Advanced X-1 escorted by a squadron of standard TIE fighters. Vader had arrived personally to oversee the assault. Omni-Man observed as Vader's ship descended toward the rebel base, bypassing the main battle lines. The Sith Lord was not interested in the rebels, he realized. He was hunting bigger prey. With a burst of speed, Omni-Man intercepted the TIE squadron, tearing through 3 of the fighters before they could react, making it appear as though they had been struck by rebel anti-aircraft fire. Vader's ship banked sharply, evading debris, then accelerated toward the base's main entrance. Inside the rebel command center, chaos reigned as systems failed and Imperial troops breached the outer defenses. Leia was coordinating the final stages of the evacuation, her voice calm despite the desperation of their situation. "The last transport is loading now," she reported to Luke, who had just returned from the front lines, his snowsuit scorched by blaster fire. "We need to get to the Millennium Falcon. Han has it prepped and ready." "Where's Omni-Man?" Luke asked, looking around. As if in answer, the main doors blew inward, followed by the ominous sound of mechanical breathing. Darth Vader strode into the command center, red lightsaber ignited, Imperial snowtroopers fanning out behind him. "Princess Leia, Commander Skywalker," Vader intoned. "Your rebellion ends here." Luke ignited his own lightsaber, stepping protectively in front of Leia. You'll have to go through me first. If necessary, Vader replied, advancing steadily. The confrontation was interrupted by a blur of motion as Omni-Man appeared between them, hovering slightly above the ground, arms crossed in an attitude of casual defiance. "Lord Vader," he greeted the Sith. "I was wondering when you would make an appearance." Vader halted. "The Emperor is most displeased with your betrayal, Viltrumite, yet he is willing to be merciful. Return with me now, pledge your loyalty to the Empire, and your life will be spared." Omni-Man laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Spared? By whom? Your Emperor with his parlor tricks. You with your glowing sword?" His expression hardened. "I have broken moons with my bare hands, Vader. What could you possibly do to me?" "There are things worse than death," Vader replied ominously. "Powers you cannot comprehend." "Perhaps," Omni-Man acknowledged, "but not today." With blinding speed, he struck, not at Vader but at the ceiling above, bringing down tons of ice and stone between the Imperial forces and the retreating rebels. "Go," he ordered Luke and Leia. "Get to your ship. I'll hold them here." As the rebels fled toward the hangar where the Millennium Falcon waited, Vader used the Force to clear a path through the debris, his lightsaber slicing through ice and stone with equal ease. "Impressive," Omni-Man commented, hovering just beyond the Sith Lord's reach. "But futile." Vader extended his hand, and Omni-Man felt a slight pressure around his throat, as though unseen fingers were attempting to constrict his breathing. He smiled coldly. "Your mystical energy field has no hold on me, Vader." With a sudden burst of his heat vision, he struck at the Sith Lord's mask, not with full power that would have vaporized the man's head, but with enough force to crack the protective faceplate, exposing the breathing apparatus beneath to the frigid air. Vader staggered back, one hand rising protectively to his damaged mask as alarms within his suit began to sound. The snowtroopers opened fire, their blaster bolts bouncing harmlessly off Omni-Man's invulnerable form. "Another time, perhaps," Omni-Man said, before accelerating away through the collapsing tunnels of the rebel base, leaving destruction in his wake to slow any pursuit. He reached the main hangar in time to see the Millennium Falcon lifting off, its engines straining against the planet's gravity. Above, Imperial Star Destroyers moved to intercept, their massive forms silhouetted against the gray sky. With careful calculation, Omni-Man streaked upward, positioning himself between the fleeing rebel ship and the Imperial fleet. As the Star Destroyers opened fire, he deflected the most threatening shots with his body, allowing the impacts to throw him back toward the planet's surface as if he had been struck down. From the bridge of his flagship, a recovering Vader watched this display through a tactical view screen. "Curious," he murmured, more to himself than to the nervous officers around him. He restrains himself. "Lord Vader," an admiral approached cautiously. "The rebel ship has escaped into hyperspace. Shall we pursue?" "No," Vader decided, his damaged breathing apparatus making his already mechanical voice even more distorted. "Return to Coruscant. The Emperor will want a full report." As the Imperial fleet withdrew, having secured the now abandoned rebel base, Omni-Man circled the planet at high altitude, watching for stragglers. The evacuation appeared complete, all rebel forces either escaped or dead. He found himself oddly satisfied with this outcome, though he had done relatively little to ensure it. The rebels had proven themselves resourceful and determined, qualities he respected even if he found their idealism naive. Setting a course for the rendezvous point provided to him by Princess Leia, Omni-Man accelerated into space, already considering the next phase of his unexpected sojourn in this strange galaxy. The ancient temple on Malachor V might indeed hold the key to his return home. Yet a part of him, a part he was reluctant to acknowledge, wondered if returning to Viltrum was truly what he desired. Here, in this galaxy far from his own, he was free from the weight of empire, from the constant reinforcement of Viltrumite ideology, free to consider questions he had long ago stopped asking himself, free, perhaps, to become something other than what he had been made to be. On Coruscant, Emperor Palpatine received Vader's report with apparent equanimity, though the dark side swirled around him in patterns of barely contained fury. "So our visitor continues to defy us," he mused, pacing slowly around the holographic display showing the battle at Hoth. Yet he restrains his power, hides the full extent of his capabilities. "He could have destroyed our fleet," Vader confirmed, his damaged mask now replaced. "Instead, he merely allowed the rebels to escape." "Interesting." Palpatine paused the hologram at an image of Omni-Man deflecting turbolaser fire from a Star Destroyer. "He fears exposure, fears the full attention of the Empire." A thin smile spread across his withered features. Or perhaps he begins to care for these rebels, to see them as something more than a means to an end. "A weakness we can exploit," Vader suggested. "Indeed." The Emperor waved a hand, and the hologram shifted to display a star chart. "Our agents report rebel activity near the Malachor system. Apparently, they seek access to the ancient Sith temple there." His yellow eyes gleamed with malicious insight. "They believe it holds the key to sending our visitor home." "Shall I intercept them, Master?" "No, Lord Vader. Let them proceed, for now." Palpatine's voice lowered to a whisper. "The temple on Malachor holds secrets even I have not fully explored. Secrets of space and time, of realities beyond our own. If the Viltrumite attempts to use its power without proper understanding..." He left the thought unfinished, his implication clear. "And if he succeeds?" Vader asked. Palpatine's expression hardened. "Then we shall be prepared. The Death Star construction has been accelerated as ordered. The battle station will be operational sooner than anticipated. It will not be enough against his power." "The Death Star is merely one instrument among many," Palpatine replied dismissively. "I have set other plans in motion, ancient technologies, forgotten weapons." His eyes took on a distant look. "There are powers in the universe that even a Viltrumite would fear. Lord Vader, we need only find the means to control them." As Vader departed to oversee the implementation of his master's orders, Palpatine returned to the holographic display, studying the image of Omni-Man with calculating interest. Such raw power, such potential as a weapon. It would be a shame to destroy him if he could instead be harnessed, controlled, directed toward the Emperor's enemies. But Palpatine had not achieved dominance over an entire galaxy by taking unnecessary risks. If the Viltrumite could not be controlled, then he would be eliminated, regardless of the cost. One way or another, the interloper would serve the purposes of the Empire. Whether he wished to or not, the rebel fleet regrouped in deep space, far from Imperial patrol routes. The evacuation from Hoth had been costly, with significant losses in personnel and equipment, but the core of the Alliance remained intact, ready to continue their struggle against the Empire. Aboard the flagship, Home 1, Omni-Man met with the rebel leadership once more. Maps and tactical displays showed the route to Malachor 5, a world deep in the Outer Rim, shrouded in dark legends and forbidden lore. "The journey will be dangerous," Mon Mothma cautioned. "Imperial forces patrol the region heavily, and the planet itself is said to be cursed. Few who land there ever return." "Superstition," Omni-Man dismissed. "I fear no curses." Ki-Adi-Mundi stroked his beard thoughtfully. "Not superstition, but history. Thousands of years ago, a great battle was fought there between Jedi and Sith. The resulting discharge of Force energy created a wound in reality itself, a permanent scar that distorts the natural order, which makes it the perfect place to find a way home," Omni-Man concluded. "When do we depart?" General Riekan approached the tactical display. "Our intelligence suggests a gap in Imperial patrols 3 days from now. A small, fast ship could slip through undetected." "I need no ship," Omni-Man reminded them. "I can travel through space unprotected." "But you do need guidance," Luke pointed out, entering the briefing room with Leia at his side. "The temple's exact location is hidden, its entrance concealed by both natural formations and Sith alchemy. Without Force sensitivity to detect it, you could search for years and never find the way in. Omni-Man's expression darkened. Always complications, always delays. Then you will accompany me. Luke nodded. I've already volunteered. Along with Han, Chewie, and Leia. The Millennium Falcon is being prepared now. For a moment, Omni-Man considered simply seizing the young Jedi and flying to Malachor himself, forcing Luke to guide him to the temple at superhuman speed. But such an approach would likely fail. The Force sensitive spoke of was more than just power, it seemed, but a form of perception, of connection to the energies of this galaxy. Rushing blindly would be counterproductive. 3 days, he agreed reluctantly. No longer. As the meeting concluded, Leia approached him privately. There's something you should know before we undertake this mission, she said, her expression grave. Our spies within the Empire report that the Emperor has accelerated work on the Death Star. It may be operational within months rather than years. What concern is that to me? Omni-Man asked. By then, I intend to be gone from your galaxy. Leia studied him intently. Would you truly leave, knowing what the Empire will do with such a weapon? Billions will die, whole worlds reduced to rubble in moments. Every empire demands sacrifices, Omni-Man replied, though he found the words rang hollow even to his own ears. The strong survive, the weak perish. It is the way of things. Is it? Leia challenged. Or is it simply what those in power tell themselves to justify atrocity? She stepped closer, unintimidated by his physical presence. You speak of strength, Omni-Man. I see someone running from a fight. Anger flashed in his eyes. Be careful, Princess. I have destroyed civilizations for less provocation. And yet you saved a settlement of farmers on Dantooine, she countered. You helped evacuate our base on Hoth. Your actions speak louder than your philosophy. Before he could formulate a response, she turned and walked away, leaving him with uncomfortable thoughts that refused to be easily dismissed. The 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. The Millennium Falcon, notorious for its mechanical issues, underwent extensive repairs and modifications. Luke spent hours in meditation, guided by the spirit of his former mentor, Obi-Wan Kenobi, attempting to prepare himself for the dark energies they would encounter on Malachor. Leia coordinated with Rebel intelligence, establishing fallback plans and emergency protocols should their mission fail. Omni-Man observed these preparations with growing impatience. The Rebels' methodical approach seemed inefficient to him, their concern for contingencies and safety margins unnecessary given his presence. Yet he recognized a certain admirable thoroughness in their planning, a commitment to survival against overwhelming odds that had kept their movement alive despite the Empire's vastly superior resources. On the morning of their departure, he found Luke alone in a small meditation chamber, the young Jedi seated cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed in concentration. Without opening his eyes, Luke acknowledged his presence. "You're troubled," the young man observed. Omni-Man frowned. "Your mystical senses are mistaken. I am merely impatient to be underway." Luke opened his eyes, regarding the Viltrumite with a calm that belied his youth. "No, there's conflict in you. I can feel it, even though you exist somewhat outside the Force. You question your path." "My path is clear," Omni-Man insisted. "Return to my galaxy, to my empire, to my war." "Is it what you truly want?" Luke asked quietly. "Or what you believe is expected of you?" The question struck uncomfortably close to thoughts Omni-Man had been avoiding. He turned away. "You know nothing of my world, boy. Nothing of my obligations or the purpose for which I was bred." "I know something of expectations and destinies," Luke replied. "My father was a great Jedi before he fell to the dark side. Everyone assumed I would follow his path, become what he once was." A shadow passed across his features. "But I've learned that we must each find our own way, make our own choices. Some choices are made for us by the circumstances of our birth, Omni-Man said, more to himself than to Luke. The young Jedi rose to his feet. But even then, we choose how to respond to those circumstances. He looked up, meeting the Viltrumite's gaze directly. You're more than what your empire made you to be. I've seen it in your actions, even when you try to hide it from yourself. Omni-Man said nothing, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation, with the echoes it raised of similar words spoken by his son in that other life, that other galaxy. It's time, he said abruptly. The patrol gap your general spoke of will open soon. Luke nodded, gathering his few belongings. May the Force be with us, he murmured. I prefer to rely on more tangible advantages, Omni-Man replied dryly. Yet as they made their way to the hangar where the Millennium Falcon waited, he found himself wondering about this force that seemed to guide the young Jedi, this energy that supposedly bound all living things together. On Viltrum, such notions would be dismissed as the superstitious ramblings of lesser species. Power came from strength, from genetic superiority, from the will to dominate, not from some mystical connection to the universe itself. Yet he had seen Vader move objects with his mind, had felt the subtle pressure of the Sith Lord's attempt to choke him, had witnessed Luke's preternatural reflexes and awareness. There was something at work in this galaxy that defied his understanding, something that granted power through means other than physical might. The thought was both intriguing and vaguely threatening to one who had built his entire identity around being the strongest, the fastest, the most physically dominant being in any room. The Millennium Falcon was ready for departure, its engines humming with barely contained energy as Han Solo made final adjustments to the nav computer. The smuggler looked up as Omni-Man and Luke entered the ship. Everyone strapped in? Han called back to the main cabin where Leia and Chewbacca were securing equipment. This could get bumpy. Imperial patrols have been increasing throughout the sector. Just get us to Malachor in one piece. Solo. Omni-Man instructed, taking a seat in the main cabin. I grow tired of delays. Han threw him an irritated glance. Yeah, well, some of us can't fly through space without a ship. So, unless you want to try carrying us all there yourself, how about a little patience? The Falcon lifted off smoothly, gliding out of the rebel hangar and into the void of space. As soon as they were clear of the fleet, Han engaged the hyperdrive, and stars stretched into streaking lines as they made the jump to light speed. Their route took them through multiple hyperspace jumps, a circuitous path designed to throw off any Imperial pursuit. Between jumps, Omni-Man would exit the ship, scouting ahead for potential threats, his ability to travel through space unprotected, proving invaluable for reconnaissance. During one such interval, as the Falcon drifted in the shadow of a gas giant while Han recalibrated the hyperdrive, Leia joined Omni-Man in the ship's small galley. He was studying a holographic projection of Malachor 5, memorizing its topography and known features. Luke believes in you, she said without preamble. He thinks you're fighting against your nature, trying to be something more than a conqueror. Omni-Man did not look up from the hologram. The boy is naive. He sees redemption everywhere because he needs to believe it's possible for his father. Leia's expression hardened. Vader is not Luke's father. His father was Anakin Skywalker, a Jedi who was murdered by Vader. Is that what he told you? Omni-Man asked, finally turning to face her. Interesting. What do you mean? Nothing. Omni-Man returned his attention to the hologram, merely that deception takes many forms, including self-deception. We tell ourselves comfortable lies to avoid uncomfortable truths. Leia studied him for a long moment. Like the lies you tell yourself about why you help us. Before he could respond, the ship's intercom crackled to life with Han's voice. We've got company. Imperial patrol coming in fast. Omni-Man was moving before the announcement finished, reaching the cockpit in a blur of motion. Through the viewport, he could see 3 TI interceptors approaching, their distinctive angular silhouettes unmistakable against the backdrop of space. "I'll handle this," he stated, already moving toward the airlock. "Wait," Luke called after him. "If you destroy them, the Empire will know we're here. Their patrol route should have them report in regularly." Omni-Man paused. "What do you suggest?" "We hide," Han answered, already powering down non-essential systems. "We can lose them there. Wait until they move on." It seemed a cowardly approach to Omni-Man, but he recognized the logic. Stealth was preferable to confrontation when their goal was to reach Malachor undetected. The Falcon drifted silently into the planet's rings, a collection of ice, rock, and dust that provided both cover and hazard. Han's piloting skills were impressive, Omni-Man had to admit, as the smuggler guided his ship through the debris field with minimal use of engines, relying on momentum and carefully timed thrusters to avoid collisions. The TIE interceptors followed at first, probing the rings with sensor sweeps, but eventually gave up, unable to detect the powered-down freighter amid the natural interference of the rings. As they departed, returning to their patrol route, Han allowed himself a satisfied smile. "See? Sometimes not fighting is the smart play." Omni-Man merely nodded, though privately he found the concept alien to his Viltrumite training. On his world, conflict was met head-on, enemies destroyed without hesitation or subterfuge. This rebellion, with its guerrilla tactics and emphasis on survival over direct confrontation, operated on principles that contradicted everything he had been taught. Yet they persisted, these rebels, against an enemy that outgunned and outnumbered them at every turn. There was a certain stubborn resilience in their approach that he found himself reluctantly admiring. Once the Imperial patrol was safely gone, the Falcon powered up again and resumed its journey. One more hyperspace jump brought them to the outer edges of the Malachor system, a region of space that seemed darker somehow, the stars dimmer, the void between them more absolute. "I've got a bad feeling about this," Han muttered as he guided the ship toward the fifth planet in the system, a shadowed world that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the light of its distant sun. Omni-Man felt it too, a strange heaviness in the air, as if the very atmosphere within the ship had become thicker, more resistant. He saw Luke close his eyes, his expression tightening in concentration or discomfort. "The dark side is strong here," the young Jedi said softly. "I can feel it reaching out, trying to find purchase in our minds." "Speak for yourself, kid," Han replied, though his usual bravado seemed forced. "I'm just focused on getting us down in one piece. Sensors are showing some weird energy patterns in the upper atmosphere." As they began their descent toward Malachor 5, the ship's systems began to fluctuate, displays flickering, engines stuttering. Han fought the controls, swearing colorfully as the Falcon bucked and shuddered. "Something's interfering with the power couplings," he shouted over the growing noise of stressed machinery. "We're losing control." Omni-Man moved quickly to the boarding ramp, lowering it despite the howling wind that immediately tore through the ship as atmosphere vented into the turbulent skies of Malachor. "I'll guide you down," he called to Han, before launching himself out into the storm. Flying alongside the struggling freighter, Omni-Man could see the problem clearly. Strange arcs of energy, neither lightning nor any conventional electrical discharge, were playing across the ship's hull, disrupting its systems. With careful precision, he positioned himself beneath the Falcon, taking its weight upon his shoulders and guiding its descent through the worst of the atmospheric disturbance. The planet's surface, when it finally came into view, was a blasted wasteland of sharp, crystalline formations and deep fissures that glowed with an internal red light. The remains of ancient structures jutted from the broken ground, their architecture alien and disturbing, designed to inspire dread rather than awe. Omni-Man located a relatively flat area near what appeared to be a massive temple complex and set the Falcon down gently. As the engines powered down, the strange interference subsided, though an oppressive weight remained in the air, a sense of wrongness that seemed to seep from the very ground. The boarding ramp lowered fully, and Luke emerged first, his lightsaber in hand though not yet ignited. His eyes scanned the horizon, taking in the desolate landscape. "This place," he murmured, "it's a wound in the Force. I can feel the echoes of what happened here, the death, the suffering." Han followed, blaster drawn, with Leia and Chewbacca close behind, similarly armed. "Let's find this temple and get what we came for," the smuggler said, his usual swagger subdued by their surroundings. "This planet gives me the creeps." As they set out toward the distant temple complex, Omni-Man found himself unusually alert, sensitive to their environment in a way that went beyond his enhanced senses. There was something about this place that seemed to resonate on a frequency he had never experienced before, a vibration that he felt not in his ears or eyes but somewhere deeper, more fundamental. "You feel it too," Luke observed, walking beside him, "the dark side reaching out to you." "I feel something," Omni-Man admitted reluctantly, "though I doubt it's your mystical energy field." Luke shook his head. "The Force exists whether you acknowledge it or not. And here, in this place, the dark side has been concentrated, focused by ancient Sith rituals and the death of thousands. It seeks power, and you, Omni-Man, are power incarnate." The Viltrumite frowned but said nothing. The young Jedi's words held an uncomfortable ring of truth. There was something here that called to him, that whispered promises of even greater strength, greater control. They had walked for perhaps an hour when Luke suddenly stopped, his hand going to his lightsaber. "We're not alone," he warned, his voice barely above a whisper. From the shadows of a crystalline formation emerged a figure in black armor, a red lightsaber igniting with a distinctive snap hiss. Not Vader, but similar in aspect, the face hidden behind a mask stylized to evoke fear. An Inquisitor. Leia identified their opponent, raising her blaster. More figures appeared, surrounding them, each bearing the same red lightsaber, each masked and armored in black. The Empire's Force-sensitive hunters, dispatched to eliminate any remaining Jedi and other threats to the Emperor's rule. "The Emperor sends his regards," the lead Inquisitor announced, voice distorted by the mask. "Surrender the Viltrumite, and the rest of you may live." Luke ignited his lightsaber, the blue blade humming with energy. "That's not going to happen." Han leveled his blaster. What he said. The Inquisitors began to advance, moving with the fluid grace of trained killers. Luke met the first one's attack, their lightsabers clashing in a shower of sparks. Han and Leia opened fire, their blaster bolts deflected by the other Inquisitors with contemptuous ease. Omni-Man watched the opening moments of the battle with tactical assessment. These Force users were skilled, dangerous to ordinary beings, but nothing compared to him. He could end this confrontation in seconds, tearing through the Inquisitors before they could even register his movement. Yet, something held him back, a curiosity about these warriors who wielded the same mystical energy as Vader and Luke, but seemed to draw on its darker aspects more deliberately, more completely. The lead Inquisitor disengaged from combat with Luke and turned to face Omni-Man directly. "The Emperor has studied you, Viltrumite. He knows your strengths and your weaknesses." "I have no weaknesses," Omni-Man replied coldly. "No?" The Inquisitor raised a hand, and suddenly Omni-Man felt a pressure in his mind, not the crude attempt at force choke that Vader had tried, but something more subtle, more insidious. Images began to flash before his eyes, memories of his son, of Earth, of the conflict that had torn his life apart. How could this being access such thoughts? The Force had never affected him before. "This planet amplifies our powers," the Inquisitor explained, as if reading his confusion. "And you, Viltrumite, are not as immune as you believe. Your mind resists direct assault, yes, but here, on Malachor, the barriers between realities are thin. Your thoughts leak through, visible to those with the sensitivity to perceive them." Omni-Man felt anger rising within him, a familiar rage that had destroyed cities on Earth when fully unleashed. With a burst of speed, he charged the Grand Inquisitor, only to find himself striking empty air as the Force user sidestepped with preternatural agility. "Your power is impressive," the Inquisitor acknowledged, "but predictable. Brute force, applied directly. The Emperor offers you something more: refinement, control, purpose." Around them, the battle continued, Luke holding his own against two Inquisitors, while Han, Leia, and Chewbacca fought defensively, using the terrain for cover as they fired at their attackers. "I serve no master," Omni-Man growled, circling his opponent. "Yet you serve these rebels," the Inquisitor countered. "These weak, doomed idealists who fight against the inevitable. Why? What do they offer that the Empire cannot provide 1,000-fold? The question gave Omni-Man pause. Why indeed had he allied himself with the rebellion? Initially for information, for help returning home. But he could have extracted that from the Empire just as easily, perhaps more efficiently given their vast resources. The moment of hesitation was all the Inquisitor needed. With a gesture, the Dark Force user sent a wave of energy not at Omni-Man, but at the ground beneath his feet. The crystalline surface shattered, revealing a chasm that dropped away into impenetrable darkness. Omni-Man began to hover, avoiding the fall easily, but the Inquisitor's true target became clear as Luke, distracted by his own opponents, toppled over the edge with a cry of surprise. Without conscious thought, Omni-Man dove into the abyss, accelerating to catch the falling Jedi before he could be lost to the darkness below. As his hand closed around Luke's arm, he felt something unexpected, a surge of concern for this young human that went beyond tactical considerations or alliance of convenience. He returned to the surface with Luke to find the battle had shifted. Leia was down, clutching a wounded shoulder, while Han and Chewbacca had been backed against a crystalline formation, surrounded by Inquisitors. "Enough, Omni-Man," they declared, setting Luke safely on solid ground before turning to face their attackers. "This ends now." With a display of speed that left afterimages in the air, he moved through the Inquisitors, not killing them but disarming them literally, breaking wrists and shattering the hilts of their lightsabers. Within seconds, all but the lead Inquisitor were incapacitated, moaning on the ground or unconscious. The lead Inquisitor backed away, lightsaber held defensively. The Emperor foresaw this possibility. "He sent us not to defeat you, but to delay you." The masked figure gestured toward the distant temple. Even now, his true emissary approaches the heart of Malakor's power. What he seeks there will ensure that you never leave this galaxy, Viltrumite, except in service to the Empire. With a final flourish of his lightsaber, the Inquisitor leapt backward into the shadows, vanishing from sight. Han rushed to Leia's side, examining her wound. "Lightsaber burn," he reported grimly. "Not too deep, but she needs medical attention." "Take her back to the ship," Luke instructed, then turned to Omni-Man. "We need to reach the temple before Vader or whoever else the Emperor sent gets what they're after." Omni-Man nodded. "I'll carry you. We'll be there in seconds." "No," Luke shook his head. "The approach to the temple is lined with ancient Sith artifacts and traps. Moving too quickly could trigger defenses we're not prepared for. We need to proceed carefully." Frustrated but recognizing the young Jedi's expertise in these matters, Omni-Man agreed. As Han and Chewbacca helped Leia back toward the Falcon, he and Luke continued toward the looming temple, now moving at a cautious pace, alert for any signs of danger. The temple grew more imposing as they approached, its architecture a study in aggressive angles and shadowed recesses. Great statues lined the approach, hooded figures with their faces hidden in darkness, hands outstretched in gestures that might have been benediction or threat. Sith Lords, Luke identified them, the ancient masters of the dark side. They built this temple as a focal point for their power, a place where the barrier between our world and something else grows thin. As they passed between the statues, Omni-Man felt that strange resonance again, stronger now, a vibration that seemed to pass through his very atoms. It was not unpleasant, exactly, but disturbing, as if parts of himself were being pulled slightly out of alignment with the rest. "You feel it," Luke observed. "The temple is reacting to your presence. You're not of this galaxy, not bound by its rules. That makes you both vulnerable and powerful here." They reached the temple entrance, a massive doorway carved with symbols that seemed to shift and change when viewed directly. Luke studied them briefly, his expression troubled. "These inscriptions speak of travel between worlds," he translated hesitantly, "of pathways beyond normal space and time, but also a notation of a price to be paid for such travel." "What price?" Omni-Man demanded. Luke shook his head. "It's not specific. Just a warning that power of this magnitude requires sacrifice. I have sacrificed more than you can imagine for power," Omni-Man replied grimly. "Whatever price this temple demands, I will pay it." They passed through the doorway into darkness, Luke's ignited lightsaber providing their only illumination. The interior of the temple was vast, a single chamber that stretched upward into shadows too deep for even Omni-Man's enhanced vision to penetrate. At its center stood a massive pyramidal structure, a holocron of immense proportions, glowing with a pulsing red light. And before it, cloaked in black, stood a familiar figure. "Vader," Luke breathed, his grip tightening on his lightsaber. The Sith Lord turned to face them, his damaged mask repaired but still bearing the scorch marks from Omni-Man's heat vision during their confrontation on Hoth. In his hand, he held what appeared to be a small crystal, blood red and pulsing with the same energy as the massive holocron behind him. "You are too late," Vader announced. "The Sith key is mine. With it, I can control the dimensional gateway this temple was built to contain." Omni-Man stepped forward. "That gateway is my way home, Vader. Give me the crystal." "Home?" Vader's mechanical laugh was chilling. "The Emperor has other plans for you, Viltrumite. This crystal does not merely open a pathway to your galaxy. It binds the traveler to the will of its possessor." Understanding dawned on Omni-Man. "You intend to send me back as your slave, your weapon against your enemies." "The Emperor's weapon," Vader corrected, "though I have my own ambitions regarding its use." Luke moved to Omni-Man's side. "We can't let him leave with that crystal." For once, the Viltrumite was in complete agreement with the young Jedi. With a burst of speed, he charged Vader, only to find himself rebuffed by an invisible barrier that flared red where he struck it. "The temple protects its secrets," Vader explained, satisfaction evident in his voice despite its mechanical distortion. "And me, as the holder of the key. You cannot reach me through force alone." Luke stepped forward, lightsaber raised. "Then perhaps through the force itself." He closed his eyes briefly, centering himself, then opened them with renewed determination. "I challenge you, Vader. Sith against Jedi, as it has always been." Vader seemed to consider this for a moment, then ignited his red lightsaber. "Very well, young Skywalker. Let us settle our dispute in the traditional manner." As the two Force users began to circle each other, lightsabers humming with lethal energy, Omni-Man searched for a way past the barrier protecting Vader. His physical strength and speed were useless against this mystical defense, and his heat vision dissipated harmlessly against its surface. Luke and Vader engaged, their lightsabers clashing in a storm of color and sound that echoed through the vast chamber. The young Jedi fought well, his technique improved since Hoth, but Vader was stronger, more experienced, his mastery of the dark side evident in every powerful stroke and parry. Omni-Man watched the duel with mounting frustration. He needed that crystal, needed to understand how it operated, how it could return him to his galaxy without binding him to another's will. But more than that, he realized with some surprise he did not want to see Luke fall to Vader's blade. The duel intensified, Vader pressing his advantage, driving Luke back step by step toward the edge of a precipice that Omni-Man had not noticed before, a pit that descended into the very heart of the planet. The young Jedi fought valiantly, but he was outmatched, his strength flagging as Vader's assault continued relentlessly. With a powerful strike, Vader knocked Luke's lightsaber from his hand, sending it spinning away into the darkness. The young Jedi fell to his knees, defenseless. "Now, young Skywalker," Vader intoned, raising his lightsaber for a killing blow, "you will join your father in death." "You are my father," Luke replied, his voice steady despite his precarious position. "Search your feelings. You know it to be true." Vader hesitated, his lightsaber still poised to strike. "Obi-Wan has taught you well," he said, his voice betraying nothing. "But it is too late for me, my son." In that moment of revelation and hesitation, Omni-Man saw his opportunity. The barrier around Vader flickered, weakened by the emotional turmoil within the Sith Lord. With all the speed he could muster, Omni-Man charged, not at Vader directly, but at the ground beneath him, striking with such force that the entire temple shook, the floor cracking and buckling. Vader staggered, off balance, the crystal slipping from his grasp. Omni-Man dove for it, his hand closing around the small red gem just as Vader reached out with the force to reclaim it. For a moment, they were locked in contest, the Viltrumite's physical strength against the Sith Lord's mastery of the Force. Then, to Omni-Man's shock, the crystal shattered, fragments embedding themselves in his palm. Pain lanced through him, a sensation he had rarely experienced since reaching maturity, his Viltrumite physiology rendering him nearly invulnerable to conventional injury. But this was no conventional wound. The crystal fragments burned with an energy that seemed to reach beyond his physical form, touching something more fundamental. Vader stumbled back, his concentration broken. Luke, seizing the moment, called his lightsaber back to his hand with the Force and reignited it, ready to continue the battle if necessary. But Vader made no move to resume their duel. Instead, he stared at Omni-Man, at the glowing fragments now embedded in the Viltrumite's flesh. "You fool," he said, his voice hushed despite its mechanical nature. "You have no idea what you've done." The temple began to tremble, more violently, the massive holocron at its center pulsing with increasing intensity. Cracks appeared in its surface, spilling forth the same red energy that now coursed through Omni-Man's veins. The key was never meant to be destroyed. Vader continued, backing away toward a secondary exit. "The gateway will open, but without control, without direction. It will tear this planet apart, and possibly much more." Omni-Man looked down at his hand, watching as the crystal fragments sank deeper into his flesh, disappearing beneath the surface, leaving trails of red energy that traced his veins like luminescent tattoos. He felt different, expanded somehow, as if his consciousness was stretching beyond the confines of his physical form. "Luke," he called, his voice sounding distant even to his own ears. "You must leave. Now. Return to your friends. Get off this planet while you still can." The young Jedi approached cautiously, his lightsaber still ignited but held low. "What's happening to you?" "I don't know," Omni-Man admitted, "but I can feel something. A connection. A pathway." He looked up at the massive holocron, now visibly deteriorating as energy poured from its fracturing surface. "I think I can control it, direct it, but not for long. Come with us," Luke urged. "We'll find another way to send you home." Omni-Man shook his head. "There is no other way. And if I leave now, the gateway will collapse uncontrolled. This entire sector of space could be destroyed." He met Luke's gaze directly. "Go. Tell your rebellion that they have one less enemy to fear. The Emperor's weapon will not be deployed against them." Understanding dawned on Luke's face. "You're sacrificing yourself." "No," Omni-Man corrected, a ghost of his old arrogance returning. "I'm choosing my own path, for perhaps the first time in centuries." He gestured toward the exit with his unaffected hand. "Now go. You have your own destiny to fulfill, young Skywalker. Your father awaits redemption, though he does not yet know it." With a final nod of respect, Luke backed away, then turned and ran from the temple as the tremors intensified. Stone and crystal raining from the ceiling as the ancient structure began to tear itself apart. Omni-Man turned back to the holocron, approaching it with steady steps despite the chaos erupting around him. The energy pouring from it seemed to reach for him, drawn to the fragments embedded in his flesh. As he placed his hand directly against its surface, a connection formed, a circuit completed. Visions flooded his mind. His home galaxy, Viltrum, the empire he had served for centuries, but also Earth, his wife, his son, choices made and unmade, paths taken and abandoned. The weight of centuries of conquest and destruction balanced against moments of unexpected connection, of reluctant compassion. He saw, too, this galaxy in which he now stood, its future unfolding along multiple possible timelines. The rebellion triumphant or crushed, the empire ascending to new heights of power or falling into dust, Vader redeemed or lost forever to darkness, Luke becoming a legend or a cautionary tale. And he saw himself a nexus point, a fulcrum upon which many of these possibilities balanced. His presence here, his actions, his choices, all rippling outward through the fabric of reality in ways he had never considered. The holocron cracked further, energy now engulfing Omni-Man completely, lifting him from the ground as the temple collapsed around him. He felt himself stretching, dividing, existing in multiple places simultaneously. Here in this temple, yes, but also elsewhere, elsewhen, in his home galaxy and beyond, in realities he had never imagined. With the last of his concentrated will, he focused on the energy surging through him, directing it, shaping it not toward destruction but toward closure. The gateway would be sealed, the connection between galaxies severed, the danger contained, and as for himself, he would go elsewhere. Not home, not quite, but perhaps somewhere he could begin anew, somewhere beyond the reach of empires and expectations, somewhere he could discover who he might have been had the weight of Viltrumite legacy never been placed upon his shoulders. As consciousness began to fade, replaced by a sensation of infinite expansion, Omni-Man found himself thinking not of conquest or power, but of the young Jedi who had shown him another way, and of a son in another galaxy who had tried to do the same. Perhaps there was wisdom in their compassion after all. Outside the temple, Luke ran through the crystalline wasteland, the ground buckling and splitting beneath his feet as Malachor V began to tear itself apart. He reached the Falcon just as Han was completing emergency repairs, the ship's ramp lowered and engines already warming. "Where's our powerful friend?" Han called over the growing roar of tectonic activity. "He's not coming," Luke replied, leaping aboard. "Get us out of here. Now." The Falcon lifted off as the landscape around them dissolved into chaos, massive fissures opening to reveal the planet's molten core. Han pushed the engines to their limit, the ship shuddering as it climbed through the turbulent atmosphere. In the main cabin, Leia was secured in a medical bunk, her shoulder bandaged but her eyes alert. "What happened?" she asked as Luke entered. "Where's Omni-Man?" "He stayed behind," Luke explained, strapping himself into a seat as the ship bucked violently. "To close the gateway, to prevent the Emperor from using it." Leia's expression softened with understanding. "He sacrificed himself for us." "I'm not sure he's sacrificed." "Exactly," Luke replied thoughtfully. "The energy I felt in that temple, the power released when the crystal shattered, I don't think it destroyed him. I think it transformed him, sent him somewhere else." He gazed out the viewport at the disintegrating planet below. Somewhere beyond the reach of empires, the Falcon broke free of Malachor's atmosphere just as the planet began to collapse in on itself, a chain reaction that consumed the entire world in a matter of minutes. From orbit, it appeared as a rapidly expanding sphere of energy that pulsed once, brilliantly, then contracted to a single point before vanishing entirely, leaving only an asteroid field where a planet had once been. "That's not supposed to happen," Han muttered, staring at the sensor readings. "Planets don't just disappear." "This one did," Luke said quietly. "And with it, a power the Emperor sought to control, a weapon he can never deploy." As the Falcon made the jump to hyperspace, returning to the rebel fleet with news of their narrow escape and the loss of their powerful ally. Luke meditated on what he had witnessed in the temple, the revelation of his father's identity, the destruction of the Sith key, the transformation of Omni-Man from conqueror to something else, something new. The Force worked in mysterious ways, drawing together threads from across the cosmos to weave a pattern beyond any single being's comprehension. A Viltrumite warrior from another galaxy, brought to their own by chance or fate. A brief alliance that had perhaps changed the course of their rebellion, their war against the Empire. And somewhere, Luke believed, Omni-Man continued his journey, carrying with him the lessons learned in a galaxy far, far away, where strength alone had proven insufficient, where compassion and choice had ultimately shown a different kind of power. On Coruscant, Emperor Palpatine received the news of Malakor's destruction with cold fury. The Inquisitors who had survived the encounter reported what they had witnessed before their evacuation: the confrontation between Vader, Skywalker, and the Viltrumite, the shattering of the Sith key, the collapse of the temple, and eventually the entire planet. And Lord Vader? Palpatine demanded of the kneeling Inquisitor. Escaped before the final cataclysm. My Emperor. He has reported in from his Star Destroyer. He pursues the rebel ship that also fled the planet. Palpatine turned to the viewport, gazing out at the endless cityscape of his capital. A weapon of incalculable power, lost. A plan years in the making, thwarted not by the rebellion, not even by the Jedi, but by the very being he had sought to control. Yet even in defeat, there were lessons to be learned, opportunities to be grasped. The Viltrumite had proven that beings existed beyond their galaxy, with power to rival even the Force itself. Where one had come, others might follow, or might be summoned, with proper preparation and understanding. Increase production on the Death Star, he instructed the waiting admiral. And begin a new project, codename Outsider, full resources, highest secrecy. What is the project's objective, Your Excellency? Palpatine smiled thinly. To reach beyond our galaxy, to find what else awaits us in the void between worlds, to ensure that next time we are prepared to harness such power rather than lose it. As his subordinates hurried to obey, Palpatine returned to his contemplation of the stars. The Viltrumite was gone, but the war continued. The rebellion would be crushed, the Jedi exterminated, his empire secured, and perhaps one day expanded beyond the boundaries of their galaxy itself. The Force was vast, but the universe, it seemed, was vaster still. In the depths of space, in a realm between realities, a consciousness that had once been confined to a single powerful body expanded and explored. Omni-Man, or what had once been Omni-Man, existed now in a state beyond physical limitations, beyond the constraints of time and space as he had known them. The energy of the shattered Sith key, combined with the ancient power of the Malakor temple, had not destroyed him but transformed him, elevating his consciousness to a plane where galaxies appeared as luminous spirals within easy reach, where the barriers between four dimensions were as permeable as mist. He could see them all, his home galaxy with its Viltrumite empire continuing its relentless expansion, the Star Wars galaxy where a rebellion fought against impossible odds for freedom from tyranny, and countless others, each with its own dramas, its own conflicts between power and compassion, order and liberty, destiny and choice. He could return to any of them, he realized, take physical form again, continue his interrupted existence, return to Viltrum and his conquered throne, to Earth and his abandoned family, to the rebellion and their desperate struggle, or he could remain here, in this state of expanded awareness, watching, learning, understanding the patterns that connected all realities, all beings, in ways he had never imagined during his long life of conquest and control. The choice was his, truly his, for perhaps the first time in his existence. And as stars wheeled in their courses and galaxies danced their slow, stately movements, through the cosmos, the being who had once been Omni-Man considered his options and smiled.